Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're giving you a public health briefing on a threat that, well, has become a pretty unavoidable part of our lives, microplastics. We're going to look at how these incredibly tiny particles could be affecting one of our most fundamental biological systems, our reproductive health.
So to really get this, we have to start with the scale. Just look at that number. We're talking about 12,000 times million metric tons of plastic waste. That number is, well, it's staggering. And every single bit of that plastic can break down into the microscopic particles we're talking about today. You see, this isn't some far-off environmental issue anymore. It's right here, changing our world and our bodies.
You know, it's gotten so bad that researchers are actually calling this a plastic world. Why? Because these materials aren't just out there in a landfill somewhere. They've broken down into these tiny, tiny pieces that have completely infiltrated our water, our air, our food, and as we're now finding out, us.
So that's the big question, right? How does all this plastic pollution out in the environment become a personal health problem inside our bodies? Let's break down exactly how these particles are making their way inside us.
Well, the science shows there are three main pathways. The biggest one is probably what you'd guess, ingestion. We are literally eating and drinking tiny bits of plastic. Then there's inhalation, breathing in airborne fibers and dust. And finally, there's skin contact, which is another possible route in.
And this is the part that's kind of mind-blowing, just how normal the sources are. We're talking about the container from your takeout last night, the salt you sprinkle on your food, even that single-use tea bag for your morning brew. These everyday items are constantly adding to our exposure.
And let me be perfectly clear, this isn't just a theory. This is confirmed. Studies have now found microplastics in some of the most protected places in the human body. They're in our blood, they've been found across the placental barrier to a fetus, and critically, for what we're discussing today, they've been identified in both male and female reproductive tissues. Okay, so we know they're getting in, and they're sticking around. So the next logical question is, what are they actually doing once they're inside? To figure that out, we have to zoom way, way in, down to the cellular level.
Now, to understand the damage, we need to talk about a process called oxidative stress. And the absolute best way to think about it is right there on the screen, cellular rust. It's what happens when our cells get flooded with these damaging molecules, and their natural defenses just can't keep up.
And this comparison just lays it out so clearly. On the left, you've got a happy, balanced cell. But look at the right. That's a cell under attack by oxidative stress. The outer wall starts to break down, the mitochondria, the cell's power plants get damaged, and even the DNA inside can be compromised. This is the kind of chaos microplastics can kick off. Now here's the kicker. This cellular rust is especially bad for reproductive cells. Why? Well, think about it. These cells are working like crazy. They're dividing fast, they need a ton of energy. That means their mitochondria are already in overdrive. So when oxidative stress comes along, it hits them particularly hard.
Okay, so let's get into this next part, because you have to understand that the physical damage from the little piece of plastic itself, that's only half the story. Microplastics are also playing another much sneakier role.
Scientists have the perfect name for it, the Trojan horse effect. The idea is simple. The plastic particle is the wooden horse. It soaks up all these other harmful chemicals from the environment, and then it smuggles them right past our body's defenses, releasing them deep inside our tissues.
So here's how this little Trojan horse attack works. Step 1, the plastic acts like a tiny sponge, soaking up toxic chemicals called endocrine disruptors. Step 2, we eat, drink, or breathe in that piece of plastic. And then Step 3, once it's inside, those chemicals, which aren't strongly attached, just leak out right into our cells.
And we are not talking about just any random chemicals here. We're talking about the heavy hitters of endocrine disruptors. Things like BPA and phthalates, I'm sure you've heard of those, plus other nasty stuff like PCBs and heavy metals. These are all chemicals that are famous for messing with our body's hormones.
So what's the real-world impact of this 1-2 punch? The physical particle causing rust and the chemical toxins it brings with it. To see that, we can look at some really recent and pretty concerning evidence from animal studies.
Okay, before we look at the data, you just need to know about one thing, the HPG axis. Think of it as the absolute central command for reproduction. It's a constant conversation happening between the brain and the reproductive organs, and it controls everything.
All right, now look at this. These are results from a study that used sheep.
What they found was that exposure to microplastics directly messed with that HPG axis. It turned down the master signal from the brain, GnRH, and it significantly lowered levels of FSH, a hormone that is absolutely essential for fertility in both males and females. This is direct evidence of this system getting disrupted.
And it's not a one-off finding. When you look across a bunch of studies on male rodents, you see the same disturbing pattern again and again. Lower sperm counts, more abnormally shaped sperm, lower testosterone, and actual physical damage to the testes.
And unfortunately, the story is just as bad in female models. Exposure leads to problems with the ovarian follicles, which are what produce the egg. It causes hormone levels to drop, it triggers cell death in the ovaries, and can even lead to scarring. Basically, it damages the very machinery needed to have a healthy reproductive cycle.
So let's just pull all of this together. We've seen the unbelievable scale of plastic pollution, how it gets in us, what it does to our cells, and how it messes with our hormones. What does this all mean for us, for our future?
This quote from a scientific review last year really just hits the nail on the head. It confirms that these plastics don't just pass through, they stop, they build up, and they do it in the exact cells responsible for creating the next generation.
So if you remember anything from this briefing, let it be this four-step chain reaction. 1, they're everywhere and they're building up inside us. 2, they cause cellular rust that damages our cells' power plants. 3, they act as Trojan horses to deliver a second wave of toxic chemicals. And 4, that combination hits our reproductive hormone system right where it hurts.
And that leaves us with a final, and frankly, a pretty huge question that all of this research raises. We've built our modern world out of plastic, and now we're finding that plastic has built a home inside of us. The evidence is mounting that it's having a real impact on our ability to reproduce. So the question we all have to face is, what are the long-term consequences for our children and for their children?